I would say it is a little bit of luck as well. I mean, once you understand how it works, yeah, there's so many good movies being made as well. But um, this is, I think, one of those cases where you had an insane dream, and part of it happened basically. Yeah.
It's lovely, but Mukul released the movie during the lockdown. He and Natasha were actually living, I think, a couple of miles from here at that time.
That's true.
And to release a movie on this scale, on this level, worldwide, get this sort of respect, adulation, viewership. How did you manage all that from here?
It's true. I was 10 minutes away. It was a second wave, January last year. You all remember it, I'm sure. Crazy time.
Yep.
I was living in Alibag. I knew the movie was coming up, obviously, and I made sure I had like 20 mobile phone connections. I had like 10 phones with me, Vodafone, Wi-Fi, MTNL, everything. Because if I didn't have that, I would have to go back to Bombay, basically. But those, you couldn't even move much during that time. They had locked down the villages, and also quite crazy getting the whole thing set up. But luckily, one connection, honestly, I had 4 connections, and one of them always worked, internet connections. It was quite surreal, the whole thing, because I'm sitting in a house in Alibag with my computer and doing these interviews, with mostly Europe and America and a little bit of India. But mostly, no, it was Europe and America at the time. And you're wearing a blazer and shorts. It's like those comedy shows that you see, because you're only looking at the top. You're making sure that the back is kind of okay, because, who knows who's watching it. And we were then in the Oscar race. We were actually, the way the Oscars work is that you have with your studio, you decide that you're good enough to be in the race. So they send out like your movie and booklets to all the members of the Academy, and they say for your consideration. So we had, it was all the best costume, best director, every aspect of it was under consideration. So I used to laugh and tell my wife, I mean, at that time you couldn't even fly to Delhi, forget about flying to LA because of the lockdown. But I was like, we may have to go to the Oscars, we may have to go to the Oscars. And she used to get really worried and say, my God, what will I wear? How will we go? And she used to really get worried about it, you remember? And I was like, don't worry, even if we get nominated, we'll be sitting out here, I'll be wearing shorts and I'll be wearing a blazer, and that's what it will be. It kind of happened like that, basically. But the marketing bit, yes, we had an incredible team with Netflix. Mostly Netflix, there was like 20 people on all the calls. One person from India, because India was one market, it was an important market, but it was one market. It was a global movie. It was very clear from the beginning. Internally with Netflix also, it's very important to set up things carefully. Netflix is it's a huge company. It's a giant, you know what I mean? It's a behemoth. So setting up the internal expectations from the beginning that this is a global film. This is not an Indian film. A very important point to start with, because if you don't have that, it's all about how they position it, the people they put in it, and how that moves ahead then, because it's not you by yourself. It's like 20 people working with the whole marketing team, the people who made the trailer with us, everything. There's a whole system that runs behind it. The awards team, which is very different from the general marketing team. And Ramin, of course, was an amazing. Him and me together were pushing the whole thing, looking at every aspect of the creatives, the trailer, all the posters, blah blah blah. But yeah, I'm sitting in India. It's kind of strange because you have basically a lot of late night calls. Every night you have a late night call discussing the global thing and discussing India separately, because they're two separate things. In India, you have to look at it in a different way. How do you market in India? Make sure it hits the right things, because an Indian will view it potentially differently than someone else anywhere in the world will. So that's kind of how we divided it basically, yeah.
So Mukul, my last question to you to wrap this up is, you've played many parts through your life. Businessman, entrepreneur, you did Bhavishwavani, you've performed all over the world, you've been a musician, multimedia artist, and so on. And I think all of us would love to...
All with your support.
Of course.
Susie Wong.
Susie Wong.
Susie Wong was, no, sorry, I'm just joking, but AD has had, a zillion restaurants. He still has a zillion restaurants, but he had one thing which was beautiful on Chowpatty Beach. He had a restaurant in a ship, in a yacht, if you want to call it, a big boat, small ship in the ocean, which you could take a little boat to go to, and you could have dinner and drinks, and beautiful place. And we didn't know each other well then, and he forgot, but I reminded him last week. that I did 2 gigs over there on the roof, very experimental gigs which no one liked at the time, but we had a great time. We have the recordings and they were incredible. Yeah. So
Mukul,
Eddie has supported me.